What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another Fish the Moment live stream. Tonight, Randy and I are going to be sharing the top 5 things that we learned about bass fishing in 2021. This year was kind of crazy, Randy. There was a lot of changes happening with technology, fishing pressure, with technology, with baits, new stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things going on that are changing the landscape of bass fishing. And I feel like this year, I learned more new things than maybe the past 5 years combined. And we want to kind of go through those with you guys, explain what we learned and how you guys can apply that in your fishing going into 2022. So Randy, how's it going tonight?
Doing good, Johnny, man. Just got back from Table Rock. Had an on-the-water lesson today, and it feels good to be warm, man. It's sort of chilly out there in the mornings, but yeah, that's the thing. It's a good topic tonight because it's, you never, ever stop learning. I mean, I don't care who you are, how long you've been fishing. You can learn something from everybody. I'll give you guys a prime example of what we're talking about here. We were down at Table Rock Lake today, December. Normally it's, jerkbait fishing, A-rig, little bitty swim baits, offshore deep fishing. And the client I had out there today, he caught 2 really good fish yesterday and lost another one on a glide bait in 2 foot of water. Now, I totally learned something because I never would have tried that in a million years. And he just tried it and it worked. So it just goes to show you how much we don't know about bass fishing,
For sure. And that's something that is so interesting. Fishing with other anglers and seeing more and more people share stuff on social media, you can pick up a lot more info quickly because you'll see a guy doing something random. And 10 years ago, no one would ever see that. It was just, maybe your buddies would know about it or a couple locals, but now it's shared out everywhere. You can pick up so many more little things, which is really cool. So before we jump into our list, guys, of the top 5 things each of us learned, got to take care of a couple of housekeeping items here. First, want to thank our sponsors of the Fish the Moment podcast and live stream. First one is Bridgeford Foods. Bridgeford Foods makes the best bass fishing snack on the market. It's the Bridgeford beef jerky. It comes in a lot of great flavors. Super easy to pack in the boat. It gives you a lot of good protein. It keeps you energized while you're on the lake. And you can pick it up at your local gas station, your local Walmart, and it's a great snack to take to the lake while you're fishing. You guys know we talk about Bridgeford beef jerky all the time, and they're a great sponsor of the podcast. We also do a weekly giveaway every single week on this live stream, and we're going to announce the winner here in just a second of last week's giveaway. And we're also going to be doing another giveaway for 12 packs of Bridgeford beef jerky coming up here very shortly, so definitely stay tuned for that. The other sponsor for the live stream is the Bass Tank out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. They are my go-to source for bass fishing electronics installation and where you can actually purchase electronics as well. Bass Tank are run by all fishermen. John Hookup Sukup has dominated the National Professional Fishing League this past year and is an awesome angler for bass. Then we got Zeke, the hype man over here, great on the crappie tours. And both these guys competitively fish and help with all of your installation needs as well as all of the setup needs, what you need on your boat to target crappie versus bass versus any other species. And we got guys over there who know about kayaks, know about catfish, all kinds of stuff. So if you want experts in their specialty giving you the best recommendations for your style of fishing, check out the Bass Tank. And also check out their holiday sale they have going on through the rest of the year where you can actually get a EchoMap UHD 93SV Garmin unit for $699. You can also get a full LiveScope setup here for just $2,200. So if you guys are in the market for LiveScope or just for a really good 9-inch fish finder for your boat with HD quality, check out some of these sales over here at thebasstank.com or just give them a call here at the number on the screen. Good deal there, Randy. So let's jump right into it. I don't like to spend too much time on all the sponsor stuff because you guys just want to start talking about fishing, but we do want to shout out to both Bridgeford and the Bass Tank for making this possible every week. So huge shout out to them. So Randy, let's jump right into it and start talking about some of the things that you learned. And while you're talking about that, I'll get the Bridgeford beef jerky giveaway winner primed and ready. So the first thing, just to kind of remind you, Randy, we made lists earlier today. So just to make sure to kind of give you a memory jog of what we talked about. First thing that Randy said he learned in 2021 is how effective LiveScope really is. LiveScope is your favorite topic, Randy? Favorite topic of 2021, so it's only fitting this is the first topic you talk about tonight on the stream.
Yeah, that's I watched this closely all year long, and I've been, in the middle of the thick of it. We've done a lot of information. We've talked about it a lot, and I've seen it a lot because here in the Ozarks, where we live, it's a big deal with the Clearwater offshore fishing. And then the thing that really got me focused on the fact that how much I've learned about LiveScope, and like I said, I don't use LiveScope. I'm not going to use LiveScope, but still, I'm learning about LiveScope. Is how dominant it was in the tournaments this year. I mean, if you look across the board at most tournaments, I don't care if they were in shallow water, if they were in deep water, in between, doesn't matter what time of year. There is very few tournaments out there that it didn't play some factor. And in most of the tournaments we fished, it was responsible for the win to some extent, whatever it may be. And it's not just like a deal for like offshore deep water fishing, like a lot of people equate it to. I mean, guys are getting so good at that they're catching them in shallow water, whatever. So that's one of the biggest things I learned this year is about how LiveScope has allowed guys to tap into fish that normally just were impossible to catch, and how it has really changed the face of fishing. Not for the better, in my opinion. Everybody knows that, my opinion on that. But it is what it is. It's obviously here to stay. I don't see any movement out there to, to ban it or anything. I do look at some point for them to have some LiveScope, no LiveScope type tournaments. I think you're going to see that movement increase a little bit, sort of similar to the A-Rig. But probably the biggest thing that I learned about it, and I learned it at that Bass Pro Open, the $1 million tournament down at Table Rock recently, where those two 20-year-old college kids won the tournament live scoping. There's just some situations where you might as well take your entry fee and give it to somebody else that has a live scope if you don't have it, because you're not going to win. It's just not going to happen. And that is sort of the sobering reality I learned about live scope this year so far.
Well, and that kind of leads me right into actually our winner of the Bridgeford beef jerky giveaway from this past week. Left a great comment and actually ties in really well with what we're talking about here. The winner was Jay Schwartz. It's over on the YouTube comment section, Jay Schwartz. If you are watching this right now, either live or afterwards, send us an email over at info@fishmoment.com with your mailing address. We'll have Bridgeford send you 12 packs of Bridgeford beef jerky, full-size packs, a full case right to your house. So again, Jay Schwartz, thanks for the great comment. And what he said was he wants a video, you versus me, Randy. Jerkbait is the only lure that's allowed. Jonny with the LiveScope, and Randy with 50 years of jerkbait experience, and Randy picks the lake, and let's see what happens. And he's saying he's not trolling, he just really wants to see how much a LiveScope in the right hands makes up for someone who is not one of the best in the world at a certain technique. So Randy, that could be like us going to Stockton. You have 40 years of knowledge jerkbait fishing out there. I've never fished there in January in my life. Could I compete with you with the LiveScope on Table Rock jerkbait, or on Lake Stockton jerkbait fishing? I think that's very interesting. Do you think that the LiveScope could bridge that big of a gap in knowledge there?
I think when the fish gets set up on certain type of structures, that it has to help, because if I'm, say for example, if I'm fishing a point with a jerkbait, I have to fan cast all over that point randomly to try to generate a strike. Whereas if you were on the same point, you could probably live scope and maybe pick up some fish that there may be a fish 50 feet to my right that I just didn't even know was out there swimming. And, you could cast out there and catch that fish. I think it would play a big role in jerkbait fishing. I really do. That's one of the things that if I was using a live scope, which I'm not going to, Bill, don't worry about it. I'm not moving over to the dark side. But if I did have a live scope, I can see how it would definitely add up to some more fish for me jerkbait. And I just don't see how it could not do it. I think we talked about doing a challenge like that at one point. I think it'd be interesting to do that, because I would have to, in order to beat Jonny jerkbait fishing with the live scope, I would have to cover just more water than he does. I mean, he'd have the ability to milk out an area a lot more effectively than I would, because I don't really know what's there. So I'd have to pull up there, try to catch whatever active fish are, and try to run a pattern.
For sure. And that live scope, in addition to my use of side imaging and down imaging, I can just find those groupings of better quality fish faster and know that they're there. So that's, especially certain times of the year, it could definitely help. And honestly, I think it could erase 95% of the lake knowledge advantage, because I also understand the seasonal patterns around this area of the country. So I don't think that would be as much of an advantage from a where to fish perspective even, other than you kind of have some history on knowing exactly which banks on Stockton are working. So you could eliminate water faster that way, but I could claw back all of that advantage because I could find them faster where there actually are fish using my electronics. So yeah, that would be a really interesting challenge, and I think that it would be a pretty close one at that.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I'm ready for that challenge. I'm sort of curious to see how that would work myself on that. The thing that, here's the deal, it's like, in a challenge like that, I would have to rely on, basically pattern fishing, and I would also have to rely on having maybe some advantage on knowing colors and different type of cadences to generate the fish that maybe you couldn't generate from, as far as if you have to finesse them out. But I think it'd be pretty equal, because you're going to be able to actually put yourself around, fish that there, where I'm just sort of guessing at it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and guys say more head-to-head battles. We definitely have more of those guys coming in 2022, no worries. I've been super swamped with all the app stuff, if you guys know what's going on there. So I've not been able to get in the boat. I haven't fished, Randy, but like 2 or 3 times in the past 3 months. So I have not been fishing enough to really do anything. I've just been trying to hold it down the best I can with content and get this app finished. But we're sprinting towards the end here, so I'm pretty happy about that. One thing that I would say is pretty cool here, we got a comment from Kevin. He said, the biggest thing I learned in 2022 came in the last 7 days. The fish the moment offshore jig puts them in the boat. That's what I'm talking about. Football jig action. Randy learned in 2020, that was his biggest takeaway, that this football jig, my offshore jig, catches them. And Kevin's joined the bandwagon. If you guys love some football jig content, I have a lot more of that coming. I honestly, Randy, have used the football jig less recently because of the LiveScope, and every time I just turn the LiveScope off and throw my football jig, I catch like a 6 or 7 pounder. So one of these days I'm going to I'm just going to have to take the LiveScope off for a couple of weeks and just go football jig fishing, because it definitely works.
And that's the deal with LiveScope, and it's like, and I've noticed that too, because you haven't fished the football head jig as much, in the winter and the fall as you have in the past. You did in the spring, but it's like the live scoping relegates your techniques to a handful of techniques sort of focused around suspended fish for the most part.
Yeah.
Which a football head jig is not for suspended fish.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, honestly, Randy. That's actually leads into my best takeaway, or my first takeaway from 2021, is how prevalent and catchable suspended bass are. One thing, guys, and I'm going to pull up a map here just to kind of explain this a little bit. I'm just going to pull this up on Beaver Lake here. And this is just one of the lakes that I fish for my Catch 15 challenges. One thing that I really spent a lot of time learning over the past 10 years before LiveScope was how to target offshore fish that are related to the bottom around hard structure. And if we're on Beaver Lake here, a great area to illustrate this point might be like this offshore hump that's sitting out here. There's deep water out here in the gut and 30 feet of water, and then there's this big rounded hump out here in the middle. This is a great area any time of the year, really, to catch some offshore fish. And a lot of the fish that I would focus on before LiveScope got on my boat and all those things is areas where you have these kind of small transitions from the steeper part of the hump to the flatter part of the hump. There's some rock down there, some brush. That's a great spot to check out. But it's up on top of this piece of structure, on top of a hump. I still catch a lot of fish like this, and it's a great way to catch fish. However, I've also learned that over the past year, especially in 2021, that a lot of the times the fish will be suspended out in the middle of this channel, and they're actually catchable. I knew that the fish were out here all the way back to like 2012 because I would find them on my fish finder, but I never knew exactly how to target them or when to target them. And I could catch them every once in a while, let's say one out of every 5 or 6 fishing trips, or maybe I throw a swim bait out here or a hair jig, and I could get them to bite like randomly, sporadically, but I didn't really understand why or how. And the majority of my fish would come up on top of these pieces of structure where the bass are actually moving out of deeper water up onto these flatter areas to feed. This is kind of like their feeding table. So they're feeding up here, and that's where my football jig, Carolina rigs, deep diving crankbaits, that's where they come into play. However, this year, especially on Beaver Lake and a lot of these clearer water lakes, Table Rock, I find that a lot of the quality fish I'm catching are off the drop out here, just out in front of these pieces of structure, over deeper water, but I can target them specifically with LiveScope, with baits like a hair jig, a swim bait, a flutter spoon, things like that, and absolutely clean up shop with those baits. And from a lot of experimentation, I've actually learned which baits are the most effective in which scenarios, when bass are positioned and suspended out here, when are they catchable, when are they not catchable, and more than not, they actually are catchable, and I can use my LiveScope to determine if they're catchable, if they're not, what baits to throw, and it's opened up a whole new realm of fishing. Instead of only being able to catch fish on these offshore structure spots when they pull up on top of these areas, and again, I could catch them out here, but consistently catch fish off these spots when they're up on top of these areas feeding, I now open up a whole new feeding window or a whole new bite opportunity for myself by also being able to potentially catch fish when they're out here suspended off the drop. Now, instead of maybe only catching fish 20% of the day when they pull up on this structure, now I might add another 20 or 30% of my day that's productive by fishing for these suspended fish. There are times still when I can't catch them out here where they're suspended or when they're up on top of these drops. So maybe 50% of my day I'm still not catching anything, but I add about another quarter of my day being productive, which is massive. Normally I'll catch 4 to 5 fish offshore, maybe 7 to 8 fish offshore in a given day, especially if I'm just going out there blind. And now I'm able to almost double that number on average because I've opened up a whole new world of suspended fish. And that's something that's been a massive game changer for me, Randy, because I've been able to really become a lot more consistent. And if you watch my Catch 15 challenge videos on the main Fish the Moment channel, you'll see that I'm very consistent catching at least a limit of fish, if not 15 pounds or close to it, almost every single trip, because I'm actually supplementing my normal fish that I catch on top of the drops with some of those suspended fish.
Yeah, it's there. That's the biggest thing it has done. It has exposed a population of fish that nobody ever has known was there before. Because I'll give you guys a little bit of a history lesson here in suspended fishing. There were 2 anglers here in Missouri back in the early '80s named Dick Collier and Jerry Cawthra. They won everything on Table Rock Lake and Bull Shoals, and they were fishing for suspended fish back then before anyone knew how to fish for suspended fish. In fact, Bassmaster Magazine did an article on them back in the early '80s. And the only thing that they would do, they would take a black 3/8 ounce jig with a black pork frog and cast it through visible standing timber and win tournaments. Now, can you imagine back in 1980, if you had a LiveScope, the fish that you could have caught off the shore if they were winning tournaments, swimming a black jig with a pork frog on it and winning tournaments? I mean, God, it's just unbelievable. And that's one of the things I always said. People say, well, fishing's better than it's ever been. No, it's not better. We're better at catching them than we've ever been. But if you could take what we know now back in 1980, it would just be stupid what you catch.
Oh, yeah, especially as little pressure as a lot of those fish were getting. And that's one of my other topics we'll talk about here in a little bit. A couple comments I see are kind of funny here, Randy. One, they're saying, whose jig will be better, your new jig you're designing for Baitworks or my offshore jig? One thing is Randy's jig is designed to be fished in 2 foot of water, and mine's designed to be fished in 20 foot of water. So a little bit different applications. I think they're both going to be very effective. I wouldn't throw Randy's out in 20 foot of water on a rock pile, and I wouldn't flip my football jig up in 2 foot of water in a bush. So would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, we're going to have to do a challenge on that. That's going to be an interesting deal. But yeah, our jigs are completely different. I mean, mine's for shallow water pitching and flipping. Johnny's for offshore structure fishing. And I think you could do good either or at the same time on them. You know, we're probably going to do that later on.
Yeah, maybe like March on Table Rock. You'll have your flipping jig, I'll have my football jig, and we'll go head to head. That'll be fun.
Yep.
Another thing, too, guys, I'm seeing here. One comment from Billy says, "Have a flipping and pitching contest." They're like, "Go flip and pitch all day." Guys, Randy's gonna beat me. That's not a very exciting video because we know Randy's gonna beat me if we go flip and pitch all day. Randy's been doing it. That's his like style. That's like saying, let's give Randy a live scope and have him try to compete against Jonny. Who's gonna win? Obviously, Randy's gonna win a flipping and pitching challenge, and I'll win the live scope challenge. So we try to pick our challenges so that we have an equal opportunity, or at least it's like not completely one-sided. I'm not going to try to fool anybody saying that I can catch fish flipping better than Randy. That's just silly. But so just know we're trying to keep it a little bit fair here. Anyways, so let's jump into your next topic, Randy. The next thing that you've learned in 2021. So your first one was how effective LiveScope really is. One more thing, actually, before we get into that, Randy. We've been talking about LiveScope. We've been talking about how catchable these suspended bass are and all these stuff we've learned. And one thing I do want to share with you guys is we're going to be doing some virtual seminars again on our website, fishthemoment.com. You guys have been asking for them, and definitely we want to bring them back. So if you head to our website, fishthemoment.com, go to our virtual seminars page, or just scroll down on the main page, you'll find that you have an upcoming seminar, which is Advanced Winter and Pre-Spawn Jerkbait Fishing. This is specifically for man-made lakes with shad and herring only. So no natural lakes, it's just for these shad, man-made lakes with shad and herring. So lowland reservoirs, highland reservoirs, places like that. In this seminar, Randy and I are going to be sharing all of our advanced winter and pre-spawn jerkbait tips. Randy will be sharing his 40 years of experience with color selection, profiles, casting angles, retrieves. And then I'm going to be sharing some recent discoveries in jerkbait fishing that actually led to Hank Cherry winning the Bassmaster Classic and Dustin Connell winning the Major League Fishing Red Crest Championship this past year. It's using that live scope in combination with the jerkbait to catch some giant fish. I actually caught a 10-pounder doing it, my personal best bass, on a jerkbait this spring, and I've learned some crazy things. And we did the seminar last year, but Randy and I have learned so much just from with LiveScope, and also just as the fish have been kind of getting more pressured and things like that. It's always changing, these techniques, these tips, and Randy's learned a lot of new stuff as well this past winter. So if you guys even signed up for the seminar last year, I would highly recommend signing up for this one again if you're interested, because the content's going to be very new and refreshed based on a lot of new info that we got, specifically just because we're learning more about bass behavior using LiveScope and how they follow the bait and stuff. We've got some really crazy stuff to show you. I have some amazing sonar recordings I have never shared before, including the sonar recording of 10-pounder eating my jerkbait on LiveScope. So check out the seminar. You can sign up, guys, here. All the information's here. It's going to be January 20th. So you guys have some time to sign up. It's a 3-hour seminar. And then you'll also get a recording of the seminar after it's done. So if you can't attend live, you can just sign up. And then afterwards, we'll send you that recording. No problem. Just in case you can't make it, but you still want to attend the seminar or get the info. Also, there's only 30 spots available. So just a heads up there. There's not unlimited spots. It's just 30 spots, that's all we got space for. So definitely sign up soon if you don't want to miss your spot. There we go. Good deal. Randy, anything else to add in that seminar?
Yeah, I've got some stuff definitely I've learned over the last 12 months that I want to share with you guys on jerkbait fishing. It's the more that I study that technique, one of the biggest foundations that I always talk about is it's the most complicated technique there is in fishing. There's none that has more variables and uncontrolled variables, controlled and controlled variables. And I found out some new ones specifically with colors versus water tints, because people think in terms of water clarities, but you also have water tints. You've got some water that can be clear and tannic clear and bluish clear and a green color. And based upon the tints, it has a big variable to do on specific colors, not necessarily the clarity. And I'm learning more and more about that every year, about how fish react to colors in different tints. So we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, this is something that Randy is obviously one of the best jerkbait fishermen in the entire world. So you get world class information there, and then I feel like the stuff that I've learned with the LiveScope and the jerkbaits around standing timber, brush piles, just out in the middle of ditches and drains and stuff. It's pretty crazy to compare that. When you pair that with Randy's knowledge, it makes it, we've opened up a lot of new avenues to explore, and we're going to explore them even more before the seminar. So we'll get up-to-date information even before the seminar's going, because we have all winter to continue fishing jerkbaits and learn more. So definitely check that out. Again, fishthemoment.com if you want to sign up for that seminar. Okay, so let's jump into the next one. The next one, Randy, that you were talking about is how fishing pressure has affected bass due to more boats on the lake because of COVID and just more tournament pressure. In general, it just seems like fishing pressure is having more of an impact than ever on bass fishing. Can you kind of elaborate on that and what you learned there?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I have seen in a big way over the past 2 seasons, particularly this last season, when we've had, the COVID shutdown has got so many people on the lake. I have noticed a significant difference in bass movement behavior. And one of the things that I have noticed, guys, is that I have seen a migration or a movement or whatever you want to call it, of bass simply moving offshore more the past year or two. I mean, I'm not catching. I'm having to fish deeper to catch the fish that I'm fishing for. Even if I'm still fishing on the bank, I may be fishing a little bit deeper. Instead of fishing 2 feet, I'm fishing 5 feet. Instead of pulling up on a bank where there's a lot of obvious structure on it, I'm having to pull up on those banks where there's some inobvious structure on it. And I think a lot of those fish, what happens if they get a certain amount of fishing pressure, they simply leave those areas. They don't sit there and stay on those areas. I've watched bass before, and what they do is fishing pressure affects them in a couple of different ways. And it's not only the fishing pressure, it's the increased decibel noise level on the lake. The decibel noise level from outboards, trolling motors, electronics, that type of stuff, not just the fishing part of it. But they start to get spooky, and they start to get less aggressive, and they start to transition away from moving baits and go to more slow baits, and then eventually they leave those obvious areas. So bass evolve quickly. I mean, they're not stupid. They haven't been here as long as they've been on this planet by being dumb. They learn quick, and they're learning right now. I mean, they're aware of human activity on every level. They're aware of it, from those guys that are live scoping in the middle of the lake to guys like me that are up on the bank flipping jigs. And it's gotten tougher overall as a result. I mean, tournament weights across the country are down. I mean, I'm not talking about they're down like a huge amount, but, if instead of taking 18 and 19 pounds to win tournaments regularly in my part of the country here, it's taken, 16 and 17 pounds. Instead of taking 12 and a half, 13 pounds to get a check, it's taken 11 pounds to get a check. And that is simply because of the increased fishing pressure. As a result of that, you sort of have to adapt several different ways. And there's a couple different ways that I can give you guys some tips on that. And what I've learned is it's a combination of the areas you choose to fish and how you approach that area. You have to be more stealthy. You have to make multiple presentations. You have to make a lot of different approaches with different colors, different lure categories, different lure profiles that you may not have had to use before. You have to understand timing more. Those fish, it seems like they bite more on certain smaller bite windows now. And all of that is just as a result of fishing pressure. And I don't really see it changing much. I just think bass fishing is getting more and more popular all the time. And it's sort of something that as anglers, you have to keep up with that all the time, and you have to be aware of it. And I think the biggest thing that you can do, one of the biggest things, is to be quiet. It doesn't matter if you're offshore or shallow. So many guys out there are noisy in a boat. They're noisy moving around. They talk too much. They set their trolling motor on 7 instead of 3, and they're on and off it too much, rocking the boat around. And I think fish pick up on that. I think they're aware of that. So that's one of the biggest things I've noticed, as far as it's just a change in the bass behavior. due to increased fishing pressure on the lake. And one of the other ways I can tell you about that is a lot of the places that I fish around this part of the country, I have what's called indicator places where, say, for example, if I'm fishing a crankbait or whatever, I've got certain areas that I know if I hit 4 or 5 of those areas and don't get a bite, that it's probably not working anywhere else around the lake. And I also know if I pull up on my indicator areas and I catch 1 or 2 off of every spot, that's going to keep working. My indicator areas the last year have basically gone to the toilet. I mean, there are so many places that I have caught them year after year after year for 40 years, and I'm just not catching them there this year. I'm not. The last 12 months, they're not there like they used to be. And a lot of these places are pretty obvious, and I just think it's because of the pressure, a lot of it.
For sure. That's some great info right there, Randy. Sorry, I was looking like I was looking down. We're seeing that there's an issue with the virtual seminar signups, so we're just cleaning that up right now. Sorry about that. There's a couple people that signed up already, and they changed up the whole seminar sign up process. Like, they got rid of my old service. I'm starting a new service, so it's a whole thing. So bear with us on that. We're looking into it as we speak. But no, some great info there, Randy, and it actually leads in to what I kind of feel like I learned over the past year is that offshore anglers no longer have an advantage over the shallow water anglers. I think the increase in fishing pressure overall, while it's made fishing up shallow more difficult, it's also brought a lot more anglers offshore, because as fishing pressure has increased up shallow, instead of taking Randy's approach where he's looking for less obvious banks, fishing a little bit deeper off the bank, guys are actually vacating the shoreline, trying to go fish offshore. And what I've heard from several people, this is actually interesting. So some of my friends I'm talking to who are like really good offshore anglers, they're saying there's a lot of guys fishing offshore that have no idea what they're doing. They're just kind of crowding out in the middle of the lake, just kind of randomly trying to graph around, trying to fish around. Maybe they see an angler out there fishing and they just go and kind of fish the spot after they leave, hole jack them, whatever it is, because they want to learn, they want to understand, and I completely get that. The problem is that it's creating a lot more fishing pressure on those offshore areas, especially the obvious offshore areas. It's causing a lot more motor noise, trolling motor noise, all those things over the top of these offshore fish, and it's really hurting the fishing offshore. And I've actually, Randy, had to go to the bank a couple times in some of my Catch 15 challenges to get away from the fishing pressure, because there's too many people literally fishing offshore, and for me to go up shallow, that is pretty interesting phenomenon. But one thing I want to share, guys, is an example from the summer when I was on Grand Lake. This is a area where I ended up catching I actually got a 6-pounder right here in this area. And what happened is that there's a lot of really obvious spots down this bank that a lot of guys were fishing that there was a lot of pressure on. You can see right here is actually a little red mark on this on this spot that someone left because they're like, oh, there's a point here. And this was getting hammered by boats. There's also another kind of obvious little drop off right here, over here. There's kind of an obvious flat that drops off over here and even over here. A lot of guys were fishing these areas and it was getting covered up with boats. And I knew that they were fishing this creek because I could just kind of tell with the way the bait fish were positioning, the time of year, all that stuff. And I had to find something else to get the fish to bite. And so what I ended up doing was graphing the least obvious, worst looking part of this bank. And the good stuff that I look for offshore, guys, is usually areas where you have a flat area like this that drops off sharply into deeper water. You got a spot like that here. You have a spot like this here where it's a big flat area that drops sharp into deep water. These are usually going to be your more productive areas that hold schools of fish. Those areas that were getting hammered by everybody who ever tries to go fish offshore. So I end up catching my fish right here. This is the least obvious stretch of this bank. It's a completely uniform taper to the bank. There's no drop off. There's no anything. But there was a brush pile that got planted here, a brand new brush pile. And I graphed this here because it looked like the most boring part of this entire area, and I ended up catching a 6-pounder out of a brush pile right there. I then moved to another area that was kind of another obvious area that a lot of guys were fishing, And there were guys that were fishing this area in the back of this creek. There's some guys who were fishing this hump over here. There's another little drop off over here that's kind of obvious. And there's a nice ledge right here that goes from 4 foot down to 13 feet. I found that I couldn't get bit fishing up on top of this flat or this general area here. The place where all the fish were setting up were actually down the side of this bank, almost like the edge of this flat, off the drop, suspended kind of just like right off the drop, but they weren't on the normal place. This is where you would normally find them. Like right in here, this is the normal area that these fish will set up on over the past, 10 years. But for whatever reason, the fishing pressure just pressured them, and now they were setting up over here. I used to never graph stuff like this. This looks like anti what I would always graph for 10 years, what I learned that offshore fish set up on, and I'm really having to relearn or reprogram my brain to look for stuff more off the obvious stuff. Like, it's close to obvious structure, but it's the stuff that I would never actually spend time on before. And it's causing me to increase the amount of time I have to spend graphing, because I can't just go graph the obvious stretch and move on. I have to graph everything around this area, and a lot of times it pays off, but it takes more time, and it really, when you add additional time to offshore fishing, it makes it less effective, because the one advantage that offshore fishermen have over shallow water anglers is that they can find fish more effectively because they can use map study offshore and their electronics. If you can combine good map study with good electronics, you're going to find fish pretty quickly offshore. The problem is that all of the good looking spots on the map now don't look good, so you have to look at the unobvious stuff. And normally 5-10 years ago, the good looking stuff would hold fish. 1 out of every 5 spots would hold a fish. On the unobvious, ugly stuff, maybe 1 out of 15 or 1 out of 20 spots will hold a fish. So you're basically taking 4 times as long to find a good area nowadays as you would 5 years ago, making it way less efficient, making it harder, and it's kind of bringing that playing field and leveling it out to an extent where a really good shallow water angler can compete head-to-head with a really good offshore angler most of the time, because there's equal pressure everywhere. Those fish offshore are just not getting, they're not getting less pressure than shallow fish. Now it's pretty much equal across the board on most, especially good tournament lakes where there's a lot of good fishermen. Have you noticed that too, Randy? Maybe seeing more guys offshore or anything along those lines?
Oh, definitely so. I mean, that is like probably the most obvious thing that I've noticed this past year is how many guys are just not on the bank anymore. I'm talking about even like we were at that Bassmaster Open last year at Lake Louisville, which is a mud pit. There were guys live scoping all over there in the middle of a dirty lake. So I don't see anybody fishing the bank. I literally think I'm the only person fishing the bank at Table Rock and Bull Shoals right now. Everybody else is live scoping it, and it has completely changed the way people are fishing. Personally, I think that it's sort of a trend right now we're going through. I don't see it being sustainable over the long term. I think eventually it's going to sort of fall the way that the Alabama rig is. It's going to have an application under certain situations. So it's definitely changed it. Real quick, I want to address the question here from Joe R. He goes, at what point does increased fishing pressure cause some anglers to give up on the fish due to lack of catching fish? Joe, the fish have always got to bite. I mean, they've got to feed, they've got to eat. So don't think that you can't just go out, that you're just not going to catch anything. It basically just requires a different approach, as like we're talking about. You have to usually downsize, get a little bit more finessey, pay attention to whether anglers are, go on nasty days or during the week. So, don't give up on fishing just because more people are out there. You can still have really good days on the water. I don't want to sound too doom and gloom out here.
For sure. Okay, Randy, I actually have to run and take care of this seminar thing. We found the issue, but I need to call someone and give them a password for something. So I'll be back. It's super quick. I'm just going to let you run on this next topic, and you're going to solo. This will be the first time I've never been on the live stream. So Randy, don't go crazy. Don't go on a crazy LiveScope rant and, bomb the channel. So I'm trusting you at the channel here for a few minutes.
What was our next one here?
The next one, I need to tell you that. The next one is creativity and ingenuity from younger anglers outweighs experience. I'm going to leave you with that. I'll be back here in a second, guys.
Okay.
Great. A lot of apologies. Randy, please, just be safe. Guys, hold them accountable, please.
Okay, we'll take care of it here. Okay, this is one of the topics that I've had this conversation with Rick Clunn years ago about experience versus creativity, that type of stuff. And I was talking to Rick. This was back probably 1995 or so, or maybe 96. I noticed that every year, Rick used to be in the top 10 in Bass Angler of the year after year after year. And he started where he was still qualifying for the Classic, but he was finishing, 15th or 20th or 25th. It's like his finishes were going down. And a lot of the younger anglers coming up, like Kevin Van Dam, he won Bass Angler of the Year when he was 21 years old. And I went to Rick and I said, Rick, what's the deal with this? I said, how in the world does some kid that's 21 years old beat you? I mean, you've got 50 years fishing experience. You won 4 Bassmasters Classics. And this guy, he's got 5 or 6 seasons underneath his belt. He doesn't know anything about bass movement or behavior. And Rick thought about it, and he didn't really know he didn't really have an answer for it at the time. But I can tell you guys what the answer is with it, because I've thought about this myself, about how you have guys like Jordan Lee, young kids like that, Jacob Wheeler, that they're 20 years old and they go out and consistently beat anglers that have tons of experience. And I was the same way. When I was 23, 24 years old, I didn't know hardly anything about fishing too, but I was beating a lot of these guys that were older than me and had tons of experience. The answer to that, and why everybody out there, like everybody here, there's a lot of anglers on this channel right here that are watching this podcast that are learning about fishing. And you may not have a lot of experience, so don't get down by that, because I'm telling you right now, the most important thing that you can have as an angler is your creativity and ingenuity. It outweighs experience. I can tell you that right now. That's why you have guys like, when they get in their 50s, like Kevin Van Dam, who is dominating, he's just slowly fallen by the wayside more and more every year, even though he's Kevin Van Dam. And you've got other guys that are coming on strong, because Kevin's experience and my experience cannot compete with guys that have imagination and ingenuity, because they don't know any better. And I'll tell you guys one prime thing that happened to me at Florida a couple of years ago. And I've told this story before a little bit, but it sort of illustrates what I'm talking about. Is I drew this, he was probably a 21-year-old kid, or young man, not kid, but 21-year-old guy in Florida down at the Harris Chain about 10 years ago. And the Harris Chain, if you've never fished there, the water visibility on it is maybe 4 to 6 inches where I was fishing. It was dirty, a lot of sediment in it. And if you put like a June bug colored or a black and blue beaver or creature bait, it would disappear in the water. So you had to have something that was big and bulky and dark to get a bite, because I was flipping lily pads with it. I drove this guy the first day of the tournament, and we go to this lily pad field that I was fishing, and he pulls out a watermelon trick worm on an 1/8 ounce sinker. And I look at that thing and it's like, that guy is never going to get a bite on that. It's like that thing just turned invisible as soon as he put it in the water. He wound up kicking my butt, flipping that watermelon trick worm in that muddy water over my June bug and black and blue ones. That is what I'm talking about when you're talking about creativity and imagination outweighing experience. He didn't know any better. He did not know that a watermelon trick worm was not supposed to work in muddy water, and he tried it out and it was effective. I never would have tried that in a million years, and that's why I didn't do any good that day, and he caught a big stringer of fish. And so one of the things that ought to give you guys a tremendous amount of confidence in your abilities is there's 2 things. Number one, everybody has abilities uniquely their own. Every single person out there is going to approach a day on the water different than somebody else. Now, some days, Jonny and my approach will beat you guys. Other days, your guys' approach are going to beat ours, because nobody really knows. Everybody approaches an area differently. And number 2 is by not having a lot of experience, which a lot of guys on the podcast tonight, you guys are learning. A lot of you guys probably don't have a lot of experience. Use that to your advantage. Use your imagination and your creativity, to try things that are innovative. And those are the things that allow you to beat guys like Rick Clunn. That's why guys, there's 21-year-old kids, like the two 20-year-old college kids, they beat hundreds and hundreds of dudes out there that have 50 years fishing experience. So in my opinion, imagination, creativity far outweighs experience in bass fishing. And I went through the same thing when I was Johnny's age. I was beating guys that were 40 and 50 all the time because I didn't know any better. I didn't know something was not supposed to work. I just tried it. So hopefully that'll give you guys a little bit of confidence moving forward with that.
Good stuff. I listened to part of that, Randy. I got the issue fixed with the seminar link. Apparently, it's a good idea when you're trying to sell seminars to actually connect up the thing that lets people pay for it. So now people can actually pay for the seminar, which is good. But if you guys signed up, we canceled the class and reposted one where you actually can pay for it. So appreciate the patience on that one. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I mentioned it a little bit earlier on the stream. But we're going to be doing an upcoming live seminar on fishmoment.com. If you go to our website and go to virtual seminars, we have an advanced winter / pre-spawn jerkbait seminar. Randy and I are going to be sharing all the jerkbait juice, and you can sign up here now. It will be working, fingers crossed, and we got this whole new system thing, Randy, so it's kind of going crazy, but we got it all figured out. Technical difficulties, you guys know. If you are interested, there's only 30 spots available, and you can sign up over at fishmoment.com for January 20th. So you do have a little bit of time, but once those 20 spots are gone, they're gone, so definitely check those out. So Randy, with that being said, with your idea about creativity and ingenuity outweighing experience, do you think that there is a time or a place where maybe you could go out and take all of your confidence baits out of the boat and take maybe a year to relearn all new baits? Do you think that would be do you think that could make you a better angler, you yourself? Or let's say you took out all your baits that you knew super, super well, and you were forced to relearn all these new baits. You still had the knowledge, but you had to get creative about how to use them. Would you be a better angler, maybe in tournaments or long run, if you did that and restarted?
Man, I don't know. I think that something like that would take a lot of time as far as knowing to when and how to use those particular techniques. Because I think what happens is most anglers as you get older, or even when you start out, is you develop your strengths. There's things that you have confidence. It's just like you're really good with the football head jig, electronics, that type of stuff. That's your strength. And when that gets into your wheelhouse, you're going to win. You're going to dominate doing that. And so when you talk about completely changing up your way of fishing, you have to rebuild what that wheelhouse is. And I think that you could be competitive about it, but it's I think one of the big things in fishing is you have to like to do the techniques that you fish a lot. I mean, I like to pitch and flip. I like to throw a jerkbait, and I don't like to throw a Carolina rig. I don't like to throw an Alabama rig. So it's hard to get excited about something that you don't really enjoy doing. So, man, I don't think that I could. I mean, to go back to your question, I don't think that I could take a completely different set of techniques and do as good as I do now with it. Because I consider myself, good at a lot of stuff, but not great at a lot of stuff. I consider myself maybe great at a couple things, but it's hard to be great at everything because it requires time to master any technique. Lots of time.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Good deal. Well, that actually leads... We have great segues here, Randy. We made this list. I didn't make this in order, but we have some great segues going on. So the next thing that I learned, guys, that has been really important to me in 2021 is actually the thumbnail for this video, in that it's that I'm a lot better with my confidence baits than I am when I'm trying to throw every bait in the tackle box. And one thing that I've tried to do this year is use baits that I'm confident in new ways, just like Randy was talking about, trying to become using ingenuity to change up or creativity to change up how I'm fishing baits that I'm confident in already versus trying to pick up a bunch of new baits that maybe you see on the internet or whatever. And one thing, Randy, that is always terrible, this is the thing that gets me all the time, I pull up Tackle Warehouse all the time, and I will go to the new items, and you'll go in here and you'll see featured new items, and you'll be like, ooh, that blade bait, that looks really good. Oh, I need to throw this Roman-made $99 bait over here. And I need to throw some pork trailers on my thing, and then I'm going to go down here and find some new jerk baits. And oh man, that little spinner with the other spinner on it, that looks really interesting. I'm going to throw one of those. And just scrolling through all of these, look at this new spoon. That thing looks crazy. I'm going to throw this bait here. There's so many new things that are always happening, and new rigs and new presentations. And I find that I get caught up in throwing them nonstop. And this is actually something happened, Randy, last year where I started catching a lot of fish on that Neko rig, the weighted worm rig. And you remember I went out with you and I caught them really well for like 2 weeks on it. I have not caught a single fish on a Neko rig since that day I fished with you with it. I've not been able to duplicate that. I have not caught a single fish on it. I have no idea why. I've thrown it a ton, and I was like, oh, it's going to be my new confidence bait, my new thing. I can't catch him on it. I don't know what went wrong, like why, and I've thrown it a ton in the same situations, in the same areas. I've not been able to replicate that bite. And it's crazy to me, but what I've tried to start doing, especially now that I've been doing these Catch 15 challenges, and if you haven't seen my videos on my main YouTube channel, what I try to do in those videos is catch 15 pounds of bass. 5 fish for 15 pounds. I show you all my prep, what I'm doing, where I'm going, stuff like that. On the days when I complete my Catch 15 challenges, I'm catching them on one of my confidence baits 100% of the time. Every time I fail a challenge, I end up spending most of my day or catch most of my fish on a bait that I am not comfortable with or that I'm experimenting with. Great case in point, I went to Grand Lake the other day, tried to catch 15 challenge, thought it would be a great idea to throw a spinner bait all day. I caught a 4-pounder, a 3-pounder, a 2.5-pounder. I was on track to get 15 pounds, but I didn't get a limit. I only caught 3 fish, and I didn't have enough knowledge about throwing a big, single Colorado-bladed spinnerbait to carry me through to catch 5 fish. I was somewhat successful with doing it. I could get most of the way there, but I guarantee you I would have had a lot better chance of catching 15 pounds if instead of going in the dirty water and throwing a single Colorado-bladed spinnerbait, because I know that's how Randy catches them, I'm like, oh, I'm going to follow in Randy's footsteps and catch fish his way. It worked out okay. I mean, still catching 3 fish for, 10 pounds is not bad by any means, but it's not what I was looking for. And if I had gone down the lower end of the lake and thrown a swim bait and a football jig and a rock crawler crankbait, I probably would have done a lot better because those are my confidence baits. Those are the baits I know how to fish, and I can adapt to certain situations, different conditions, whether it's wind or clouds or whatever, a lot more effectively with baits that I know I'm going to work with. So I think that's really important for me, Randy, going into 2022. I'm going to try to start narrowing down my bait selection rather than trying to expand it. That's one thing I've been trying to do recently is like, can I learn how to throw more baits? Can I learn how to do more things? In 2022, I'm going to start narrowing my bait focus down to a small subset of baits. And I talked about this in one of my past live streams where I made the idea that maybe I could catch fish on only jigs and crankbaits and jerkbaits. Jigs, crankbaits, jerkbaits, those are the only 3 bait categories maybe I need to throw ever. I might try that idea for real. I made that video because I thought it would be interesting, but it may actually be the best way for me to catch fish. I'd like to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, that's a good point when you're talking about what happens when you narrow your bait selection down is you have to look for the type of water where those baits work in. So that's actually, can be a good thing because, I don't think you can underestimate the importance of commitment in fishing. You have 2 different aspects. You have the part that some people say you need to be versatile and some people say you need to be a specialist, but it's a fine line there. And, if you take a handful of baits that you can catch good fish on, quality fish on, and don't vary from that and simply every single tournament look for the type of water to fish in there, I think you can do good. I mean, Tommy Biffle was a master of that. I mean, for so many years, The only thing that dude fished was a half-ounce jig with a pork frog on it. That's all he threw anywhere he went. And he would, every single lake we would go to, he would go to the part of the lake where he thought they would bite that, and he would never leave it. He would fish every rock, every stone, every piece of wood in the water. And I think you can do that with a lot of different techniques.
For sure. And one thing I really like about the app that I'm putting out, and you guys will hear more about the app coming here soon, so stay tuned to that. But the one thing I put together that fishing app, Randy, is I tried to come up with all of the possible tournament strategies that are effective and give a lot of options to anglers. And it's all based on patterns that I know are successful based on personal experience, what I've got information from other pros that have helped collaborate on it, or from actual tournament results. That's the way I got these patterns into the fishing app that, and I'll pull up just a background image of this so you guys can see it. It's called Deep Dive. You can check out our website, deepdiveapp.com. And that's the thing I'm really excited about with this app is that we give different bait selections or strategies along with where to fish with the areas and the cover and all that stuff, which is the key information. But the bait selection changes based on the conditions. But I tried to make it so that you could always have baits that are in that realm that you enjoy. So if you have a situation where you like throwing jig a lot, we'll give you a finesse jig or a football jig. You might not always go to the football jig, but you're going to have a jig option, or you're going to have some sort of crankbait option, even though the one specific crankbait you like a 6XD might not be perfect, you'll have something that's going to be close. And it's obviously going to adapt by all the weather conditions and the water clarity and stuff like that. And then you'll get where and how to fish it. And I think that that's really key because on any given day, anywhere, there's always going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 patterns that are working. You know that from your experience on the Elite Series and or on the Pro Tours. There's never just one guy that dominates completely on one pattern most of the time. It's usually in the top 10, there's 6 different patterns that are happening, or 5 different patterns with different baits and different types of structure, different types of cover. Fish are just like that. So finding something that is in your wheelhouse is usually doable. You don't have to go and learn how to throw every single bait in the entire world. In most cases, if you can learn 4 or 5 really, really well, you can apply that on any lake in the country year-round. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that intimidates a lot of guys, Johnny, is it's just like we said, there's 6 patterns out of the top 10 guys, 6 different patterns. One of the biggest things that intimidates not just beginning anglers, but even good anglers, it's like, where do I start? I mean, where do I need to go and how do I need to fish? Because if you don't have a big knowledge of, if you don't have a big encyclopedia of knowledge in your repertoire, it's hard to do that. And that's what's really cool about that app is it gives you a foundation to begin with. And once you have a foundation to give you some type of confidence, you can use that and then you can build upon that and put your own twist in it. But everybody has got to have somewhere to begin with, somewhere to start. And the cool thing about that app is it takes a lot of that anxiety and the intimidation out of the new body of water. Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that's going to help people with it.
For sure. It's not something that's going to say, guaranteed, go here, throw this. This is the best strategy for the day. Because there is always going to be a best strategy on that day. But the chances of you finding that strategy, and also there's no way of an algorithm always determining what the best strategy is. But in a given fishing day, there's usually 4 or 5 ways to catch a 15-pound bag of fish on any lake, anywhere, if you have that quality grade of fish. Especially in our lakes, Beaver Lake, Table Rock, Grand Lake in our area, there's a way to catch 15 pounds. And there's probably 5 ways to do it. So it's finding out what way fits your techniques, your style, and then just going and finding it, looking for it, which might mean running all over the lake. You may have to cover 10 miles of a big lake to get in the right section. And actually, Randy, that was really cool. You talked about that from your Table Rock trip. Yesterday, you guys did really, really well fishing your style. But you went down the lake to the dam today, didn't do as well, but the fish were set up in a way that they were more offshore suspended, which is not your style. But right. You were still on Table Rock able to find an area where you could catch them on a jerkbait and a crankbait, your style. You just have to hunt that water out as opposed to just saying, I'm going to throw the same baits in the exact water. I launched the boat here, I'm going to throw the bait I'm going to throw. That's not normally the best course of action. It's usually Either you pick an area and figure out which bait's going to work, or you pick a bait and figure out which area of the lake is going to work. I prefer the former, where I like to go into an area of the lake and figure out what bait is working, because I know I have a pretty wide range of strengths offshore that cover a lot of stuff. I don't branch out from it as much, but I can cover every scenario I come up to with my baits. I think you're much more along the lines, Randy, of picking a bait and covering areas in water, and that's a difference in our style. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely so. And that's one of the things that I prefer to do is I like to get into an area of the lake and I try to maximize everything within that area and like leave no stone unturned. For example, if I get into a major creek, I'll try a secondary point, and then I'll try maybe some laydowns along the bank, and then I may run to the very back end of the cove and try it for 10 or 15 minutes and try to determine how the fish are positioned within one refined or one just confined area. And most of the tournaments, if you guys look at it, most tournaments are won on spots, like small areas and spots rather than patterns anymore. It didn't used to be like that. It used to be pattern fishing won everything, but now it's not like that. There are sweet spots that have better fish, better concentrations in them, and every tournament there's somebody finds it. There's somebody's going to unturn that stone.
For sure. Good deal. Oh man, this is good stuff. A couple questions here. One is, Johnny, does the Deep Dive app listen to your conversations? No, it does not. I used to work for Nielsen doing app stuff, and Nielsen collects data on everything, and it's very scary. And I'm scared after learning what everything does. So no, we are not doing listening. We're not doing any sort of weird stuff where we log all your stuff. No, that's too sketchy for me. I know what stuff is capable of because I worked in that industry. I worked in that space. So no, we are not doing any of the scary, creepy stuff. We're doing just stuff that basically just relates to you finding fish and catching fish. We're not doing anything creepy or scary. I promise you that, because I know what crazy stuff. I turn off a lot of stuff on my phone, a lot of stuff on my apps because I don't like that, and I don't want to give that to you guys because I wouldn't want that in my app. So yeah, don't worry about that. I'm looking out for you guys on that front. Another question is from Mark. He says, Johnny, how do you resist the competitive urge to fish tournaments, or do you sneak one every now and then? I have no competitive urge to fish anymore. I fished 150 bass fishing tournaments before the age of 20. So I got a lot of tournament bass fishing under my belt when I was young, and I think it's kind of one of those things, Randy, where like you see it a lot with competitive youth, people who compete a lot in their youth or do anything like in their youth a lot. They kind of lose passion for that element of it, and I actually stopped fishing for 2 full years, guys, because I got so burnt out of tournament fishing. It caused me to quit fishing for 2 years. And I got back into it, thankfully, and I'm really glad I did. But I realize now that I don't get my enjoyment from tournaments. I don't get my enjoyment from the lifestyle of tournaments. I get my enjoyment from being on the water and figuring out the puzzle. That's why I love bass fishing. It's figuring out that puzzle, me versus the fish, me versus nature every single day. And if I can figure out that puzzle and figure out how to catch the biggest fish I can in the lake and multiple of them, that's the thing I enjoy. I don't even enjoy the catching of them that much after I catch 1 or 2 good ones. I'll catch 1 or 2 big fish off spot and I'll leave. I'll leave them biting because I'm like, I want to find the next spot where the 4 and 5 pounders are biting. So no, I don't get that urge at all. I have 0 ounce of competitive bass fishing urge left in my body, unfortunately. I know you still have the itch though, Randy.
I love fishing tournaments, but I hate traveling to tournaments. That's the older I get is I just can't stand leaving for a tournament, to be away from home. It's just, that's the hardest thing about it. But I actually do love the competitive part that I love is it forces you to get into a different mind frame. I mean, you have to sort of flip a switch when you're competing in a tournament. And I still really, really enjoy that. It's just like, man, but just driving to the tournaments and staying in strange places is not any fun.
For sure. Couple of other questions here. One of them is from Bulldog. He says the app seems to be delayed on the northern lakes. We'll have northern lakes. We have a ton of lakes getting added, guys. The beta that we put out for like 500 people or 400 people, it didn't include northern lakes. It just included the southern states, just because we didn't want to overload the servers or whatever the background thing is, technical stuff. But we have all the northern lakes in there, and we're going to be rolling all that out. So we've got a ton of requests for lakes, and we're getting them all added in before launch. So don't worry. We have a lot of lakes. We have like over 300 or 400 lakes now at this point in there. It was all across, like almost every state in the country we've had requests for lakes. So we have like everything. Like any big lake that you know about is in there. The only lakes we don't have are the really small, like tiny ones. We don't have obviously every lake in Minnesota. There's like 10,000. So yeah, we don't have all of those. But if you want one, you can request it too, and we'll get it in there very fast for you. Let's see here. Let's jump in. Man, we've already been talking for a long time, Randy. I want to jump through these really fast, these last few. And I think we can get through these pretty fast. Your next one here, Randy, is the trend of, and maybe we can go through these like couple 2 or 3 minutes on each of these, just because I feel like there's not too much time left, but we'll just roll through them quick. But your fourth thing you learned in 2021 is the trend towards more old school baits winning tournaments.
Yeah, I've noticed this specifically in different type of jig setups, like going back to the live rubber type of jigs, going back to not the live rubber, but the old rubber skirted spinner baits. One of the things that's winning a lot of tournaments right now, guys, especially in dirty water that guys aren't talking about, is the old rubber skirts on spinner baits, the ones that they had back in the late 70s and early 80s. Again, it's the same with the live rubber jigs. It's just a different look. It's a different glow in the water. That type of stuff. Just sometimes it just attracts fish that haven't seen it a lot of times. So I think there's a cycle a little bit there that the fish go through a cycle. They're seeing one particular bait, and then maybe you can go back to some old school stuff and catch fish. But I think probably the biggest thing I've noticed on that is the movement back to the old rubber skirts on spinner baits.
And that's so interesting to me with the old rubber skirts, the skirts on the jig, stuff like that. I know that there's other like old school baits that are coming back. Do you think there's a lot of baits that pros are throwing that they don't share, that are like?
Well, I can promise you that a lot of pros are throwing the rubber skirted spinner baits. I've got some buddies that live in Oklahoma, and they don't throw anything but that. Jason Christie, he throws a rubber skirted spinner bait all the time. I think there's a lot of that going on that people aren't talking about.
Yeah. That's really cool. And if we get stuff like that, guys, we will uncover it. I am like Detective Jonny. Anytime there's any tournament footage or any tournament like live streams, I am a hawk for all that stuff. So if anyone's throwing something sketch or something like that no one knows about, I am on it. I am very good at finding out what those things are. I've actually, Brandy, taken screenshots of live footage, zoomed it in, like up-res the photos on Photoshop, and like got the exact look of the bait and like figured out what was going on there. So I've done some crazy stuff. So Photoshop is my friend in that sense. So yeah, Detective Jonny will be on it if anything.
Hey, I've noticed a couple questions tonight about me not wearing underwear. I did a YouTube video talking about I don't wear underwear in super cold weather. I just wear sweats because it keeps you warm. Guys, don't knock it till you try it. Go out there the next time you go fishing in the winter, put some sweats on, don't put any underwear on, and get back with me to let me know if you're not warmer. I can promise you guys, got more circulation, you'll be warmer. I've noticed that on the feed tonight.
That's some TMI, Randy. So you're out there barefoot with no underwear. Are you going to say no pants next? Where are we going with this, Randy?
No, I've still got my rain suit on and everything underneath it. It's just, got the just free and natural there under the sweatpants, keep you warm. Just try it, man. Just see what you guys think about it.
Oh gosh. By the way, if you guys want these old school skirts, I'm just gonna transition away from that. I don't know what to say. I don't have any constructive feedback on that one. But if you go to Tackle Warehouse, guys, you can actually go to Tackle Warehouse website, go to the lure customization page, and then if you go to replacement skirts here, You can find the Humdinger silicone old school skirts. That's this right here. This is the skirt that Randy's talking about. It's literally like super old school, and you just stick them on there, flip them upside down. You don't actually put it this way. You can put it this way, or you can put it the other way. It doesn't really matter. And they have some colors here, which is good. And then also, if you want to check out some other skirts that are with old school rubber, you can actually get the all-terrain old school rubber here to put on little jigs. It's not like as good as the old, like the really old school stuff that they don't make anymore, but that stuff works. And also the flatline rubber. This Tarantula Skirts Unlimited is really good flat, double thick rubber skirt that I tie on a lot of my jigs. So that's just some stuff right there. If you guys want, these are back ordered for like forever, because when I talked to them one time, it sold them all out. But get some of that stuff if you guys want to. Go to Tackle Warehouse and check those out. And if you're there, by the way, you want to help support the channel, just go to fishthemoment.com. You can go to the support Fish the Moment page and use our Tackle Warehouse link if you're going to order any of those skirts. And even better, if you could click on that link and then bookmark it. Just bookmark it up here with a little bookmark thing. That way, every time you click your Tackle Warehouse bookmark, you use our Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. There's a little tag at the end of this URL that's our tag. So if you just use that, we'll get a small percentage of the profits every time you shop at Tackle Warehouse. That's just something easy. If you bookmark it, you don't have to ever worry about it again, but it really, really helps us out. It helps keep the wheels turning here. Anyways, people need a video on how I hand tie my skirts. Randy, we should do a video together. We'll get together and Randy and I will show how we hand tie skirts, because I got the way I do it with my old fly tying techniques, and Randy has his way of doing it. So we'll do some hand tied jigs video and spinner baits, and I hand tie some chatter baits as well. I hand tie a lot. Anything as a skirt, I hand tie it basically. Especially if I'm like really trying to catch fish. If I'm just going out for fun, if I'm going to catch 15 video, I'm hand tying my skirt on everything except for the Fish Moment offshore jig, which we have a super custom skirt that took us like a super long time to design, like a year to design. So that's the only skirt that you don't have to hand tie, because that one's custom. But anyways, let's jump back into it. So many things to talk about here, Andy, and we are running low on time. So next thing on my list of things I've learned in 2021, this will be a fast one, is I need to stay as far away from offshore bass as possible when I'm fishing an offshore area. The further I can stay away from bass offshore, the better chance I have to catch them. I think this, and I made a video actually about this, guys, on my main channel, Fish the Moment, where I actually did a test where I would fish a school of fish getting 50 feet away from them, and then I would come back later after fishing that school of fish, and then I would come back and say 100 to 120 feet away from them, and I would catch more fish after already fishing an area, coming back, but staying 50 to 70 feet further away. I would catch more fish on that return trip. And it seemed like staying 100 feet away versus 50 feet away produced 2, sometimes even 3 times as many fish on an offshore area. I think this has to do a lot with guys with their live scopes getting right up on top of those fish with their live scope and like trying to see every inch of a brush pile or every inch of a rock pile and really seeing those fish. And that hurts them a lot of times. And so what I've been doing is I actually graph over those spots with my big engine. And my big engine graphing over them does not affect them nearly as much as with the trolling motor. Because as long as you keep that big engine going at the same speed, it's just like any other pontoon boat or recreational boat idling over those fish. They don't care about that. If you're revving your engine as you're graphing or like speeding up and slowing down, that will shut that school down completely. So when you're graphing, always graph at a constant speed. Never touch that pedal if you're over the top of those fish. Like, don't slow the engine down to get a better look at the image. No, keep graphing the same speed. And the reason that trolling motor affects them a lot is because when you turn it on and off and on and off, that blade spins and it stops and spins and stops. And that sound on and off really affects those fish. And I've seen it up in shallow water where fish will spook because that trolling motor goes on and off. And I feel like it does the same thing offshore. So I've been staying super far away from fish. Honestly, Randy, if I don't need to see the fish on LiveScope, I'll even turn my LiveScope off on a lot of fishing trips if I don't need it. I use my LiveScope only when necessary, and I use 360 imaging actually instead. And on the 360 imaging, you can see your waypoint. You can set that range to like 120 feet, and as soon as I see that waypoint show up in that ring of the 360 imaging, I'll cast over there right at it and do that. And I do that probably 90 or 80% of the time when fishing offshore. And I only use the LiveScope when those fish are suspended and I know I need to use it. And that has helped me catch a lot more fish offshore. Not something I talk about too much. I save that sort of juice for the seminars. And so you guys got a little extra juice there. But we'll make some good seminars about that coming up this spring on suspended bass and when and how to fish them. But any thoughts on that, Randy?
No, I agree completely. It's the same in shallow water with that. I mean, I've noticed a definite effect, especially in shallow water if you're fishing less than 3 feet. And if you're doing any type of visible target fishing, like around flooded bushes, shallow grass, that type of stuff, it's just another one of those factors. Instead, you may go out and you may be really noisy with your trolling motor and catch 5 bass, but if you're stealthy and quiet and keep it on, like you said, quiet, you might catch 10 or 15 bass. It's just a matter of maximizing your potential there.
For sure. By the way, we already did the jerky promo. The winner was Jay Schwartz. So Jay, if you're listening, send us an email over at info@fishthemoment.com. We'll send you a free case of Bridgeford beef jerky. And for everyone else on the stream, if you want to have a chance to win a case of Bridgeford beef jerky, after this live stream gets posted onto YouTube, not in the chat here, you have to actually leave a comment on the video that helps us out with the YouTube algorithm and gets more views. So leave a comment in the actual YouTube video after this post with the number one thing you learned in 2021 about bass fishing. Please, about bass fishing. Don't need to know about everything else you learned because there's too many things. But what's the number one thing you learned about bass fishing in 2021? And if you put that in the comments of the videos after this post, you'll have a chance to win a free case of Bridgeford beef jerky. And even if you're listening to this on the podcast or the live stream after the fact, just leave a comment down there. You can just look us up, Fish the Moment Live on YouTube. You can drop a comment even if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and you'll have a chance to win that. And also let us know that you're coming from the podcast because that's pretty cool. We want to know that you guys are actually listening over there on Apple and Spotify. We post these live streams and also some of my YouTube video audio on those podcast apps every single week, so you can listen to them going to the lake and stuff like that. So a couple more questions here, Randy. One, are you going to be at the Classic this year?
I'm not going this year. Nope.
Okay, I'll probably be there just to see people and hang out, just have some fun. There's a chance I may not be there depending on what's going on with the app. So kind of TBD on that, but I think I should be there, put it that way. Let's see here. Okay. Last thing, we got about 10 minutes left, Randy. So let's take 5 minutes on each of these for the last one, and then we'll be good. So the last thing that Randy said he learned in 2021 is how getting locked into colors and techniques is a bad thing. Can you explain that a little bit, Randy?
Yeah, this is. I mean, we could talk a long time about this, but everybody develops favorite techniques, favorite colors. Especially colors. And colors, so we'll just keep it to talking about colors instead of the techniques. One of the things about colors is almost any tournament you go to, somebody says, well, man, I figured out this is the color they want. I can't get them to buy any color but this. And then somebody else will say the same thing. It's like, well, I can't get them to hit anything besides this. One thing that I found out about colors is there's a fine line between having your confidence colors and being open-minded to try different colors. And a lot of times you don't know what colors is going to be the best. I mean, I've got some guidelines that I go by and some foundations, especially like with jerkbait fishing, but ultimately you do not know what triggers the fish. And one of the things that I've learned this past year is I've experimented a lot with colors, with custom painted colors. I've got a friend of mine, David Ryan, that paints custom colors for me. And I have seen a big trend about these fish going away from traditional colors, like your blackback chartreuse side, your sexy shad, your Tennessee shad, these staples that people have fished for years and years and years. and going to more just off the wall oddball colors. So one of the biggest things I've learned this year, guys, is don't be afraid to experiment with colors. I mean, get out of your confidence zone. Like I said, if you're a sexy shad fan or a blackback chartreuse side fan or whatever, just pick up some different colors and give them a try. That's the only way you know if something else is going to work. And once you do find something that's going to work, it gives you a lot of confidence. I'll give you guys a prime example. I had one of my favorite wiggle warts is a solid chrome wiggle wart with a green back on it. And you can't find them anymore, the one that I had. And nobody will paint a chrome bait. Everybody I talked to, that they said we can't paint chrome to look chrome. And I had this one guy paint me up some. He said, "Yeah, I can do it." He was like a kid, and he painted me up some wiggle warts and sent them back to me. And it was nothing like what I wanted. It looked like this wiggle wart looked like it was a green baby poop color. I mean, it was the ugliest looking thing I have ever seen in my life. And I pulled it out of my box one day last year at Table Rock and ripped them on it. It was like the ugliest looking bait I never would have thrown, but I paid all this money to have them painted, and I thought I'd throw it for a few times. So prime example, man, just stay open-minded about your colors. I think your audio's off, Jonny.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to have him tell you I was like, Randy, tell him the story when you had that guy paint a turd on your $100 ancient pre-Rapallo wiggle wart, and you literally painted a piece of crap for you, and you caught a bunch of fish. That's what you need to do. Send over your pre-Rapallo wiggle warts and give them to a 3-year-old. Hey, paint these up for me. Yeah. I need whatever you need. I got you. Yeah. Maybe we can come up with a Randy's custom line. We got your poop color. We got no underwear, dirty feet. What else do we need? That's going to be the Randy Vlockett line. Randy Rant. I can see it right now. We need to get your own custom painted wiggle wart line, Boatworks.
Yeah, I think that would go over good, man. It's just, you never know.
You never know.
We've seen so many green phantoms and brown phantoms. I mean, that's all those fish see.
They just need a poop phantom. That's what they need. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so one thing that I saw over here that was pretty funny. A couple more questions here. One is, will Matt ever be on the Fish Moment Live? Yeah, Matt will definitely be on. We're just kind of trying to finish up the year, and then we're going to get scheduled again for next year. It's actually going to be the last live stream of the year. So we're just chilling after this, spending time with family. So we won't actually be on next week, and we may not even be on the week after that. We have to see with everyone traveling and stuff like that, and I'll be doing stuff with family, so we'll see. But anyways, Ryan, you name your jig colors that. Do you have the Poop Phantom jig skirt?
We might one day. I mean, that's a good idea.
Perfect. There we go.
Baby poop brown, baby poop green.
Great. One other thing, guys. I have one other thing to share about what I learned. This is one that's really important, I think, for a lot of guys, especially tournament guys. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone that we do have a new virtual seminar available on fishmoment.com, our website. Go to the virtual seminars page. We got our advanced winter and pre-spawn jerkbait fishing seminar. Randy's going to share 40 years worth of juice with you on different details about color selection, profiles, casting angles, and special retrieves. And I'll be sharing my recent experience with using LiveScope and the jerkbait, which actually was used to win both the Bassmaster Classic and Major League Fishing Red Crest last year. So if you're fishing tournaments in March or even February or April or even into May this spring, and you want to catch some big fish, jerkbaits are the way to do it, because that's been one of the most dominant baits in the spring, especially with LiveScope, but also without the LiveScope as well. And we're going to be giving you all the juice in the seminar. Seminar's on January 20th at 6 p.m. Even if you sign up and you can't attend, as long as you sign up, we're going to send you a seminar recording that you can watch as many times as you want. It's a 3-hour seminar, so you'll get 3 hours of information with detailed graphics. We're going to show you sonar recordings, all the baits, all the modifications, everything you need in really detailed form. So definitely check out the seminar over at fishthemoment.com. Again, January 20th. There's only 30 spots available, so definitely sign up soon because those spots fly out really fast. We already had 3 sign up during the seminar or during this live stream, so definitely sign up if you're interested. Okay, so the number one thing that one of the biggest things I learned, Randy, that I feel like is going to be helpful, especially for my Catch 15 challenges this year, and it's the last thing I have to share, is that my best days are always when I get 5 to 7 bites in the fishing day. And I always hear people talk about this, and I kind of just like let that, for some reason, like float over my head or whatever. I never really worried about that too much because I felt like as long as I'm getting bit, I always was so worried before, especially when I fished tournaments when I was a kid, just getting bit was really important. I just need to get bites. But once you kind of get past that point of, hey, I just need to get fish in the boat, and you're trying to actually catch better than average fish. Like in my Catch 15 challenges, I'm trying to catch a 3-pound average, which on our lakes is not easy to do in really any time of the year. So to do that, I need to focus on bigger fish, and as a result, I focus a lot more on just trying to get 5 to 7 bites a day. If I find that I'm getting 6 or 7 bites an hour on a pattern, the chances of me ending up with 15 pounds of fish is very unlikely. There are days where it happens and you just get on a lake and you just are ripping them everywhere. But in general, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, when you catch a big bag of fish, you're going to be getting 5 to 7 bites maximum. And they're always usually going to be pretty good ones when you have that deal. And if you watch a lot of YouTubers, guys, like Todd Castledine does a great series of YouTube videos on his tournaments. And if you watch Todd Castledine fishing and watch his tournament recap videos, if you see his days when he cracks them, he's usually struggling to get a limit. He'll have 20 pounds and have 5 keeper bites. Or he'll have 4 fish for 13 pounds. And he's just getting just enough bites, but he's doing really well in a lot of these tournaments. And you won the Angler of the Year last year for the Toyota Series. Did really, really well. And it's just because he focuses on getting bigger than average bites. He's fishing jigs, big spinner baits, big crankbaits. That's his style, and it works really well. And if you're trying to be a home run hitter, win tournaments, especially if you're just fishing jackpotters, one-day events, going for those 5 to 7 bite a day strategies is the way to go. It can burn you a lot of times, just like it did Randy when I was on Grand a couple weeks ago, or now like a month ago, where I only got 3 fish in the boat on a big spinner bait, a 4, a 3.5, and a 2.5. It bit me because I only got 3 bites. But I was a lot closer to catching 15 pounds, getting 3 quality bites, than I would have been throwing a jerkbait down the bank on the lower end, catching a bunch of 14 inchers. Like, if I'm catching 20 14 inchers, I might get 8 pounds, but I'm nowhere close to catching 15 pounds. Where with that spinnerbait deal, getting 5 bites, or getting 3 bites that are the right quality, I'm way closer to catching the bag I need to win a tournament or to complete my challenges. So I know you know a lot about that, Randy, but that's something that I guess finally clicked for me in 2021.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I know that's your style as well, so you're probably like, oh yeah, I knew that.
No, if you're going to do good in tournaments, you have got to fish for good fish. I mean, you can't just luck in, to quality fish consistently. You have to fish the type of areas that produce big fish and the type of baits that produce big fish. Then those are generally low percentage baits and low percentage areas, but somebody always figures it out what it is, and you just got to put yourself around that.
For sure. Some people are saying that no LiveScope is a major handicap fishing. I'm going to do some videos actually about that, Randy, this spring, where I'm actually going to go out LiveScope and no LiveScope. I've made a video about this before. LiveScope is not a player all the time, especially offshore. I really like my 360 imaging. I think 360 imaging is just as important as having LiveScope for me. I don't talk about it as much because it's not as I don't use it in ways that are that like sexy, I guess. With like the LiveScope, you can see the fish on the screen and stuff like that. But having 360 imaging really helps, and even without it, I can still catch fish with my old waypoint method. LiveScope, it does make it a little bit easier to catch fish at times. Like I said, it sometimes opens up a new feeding window that you can catch fish in, but sometimes you can do just as well or better without LiveScope, and I've seen that happen before as well, as I've caught fish when I've just stopped trying to use LiveScope and I start catching them better. So I wouldn't say it's this 100% of the time always going to make you better. So we're going to do some experiments with that as well, because I do want to make sure people don't get to the point where they're like I have no chance to win tournaments if someone has a live scope and I don't. That is not true. You should not be discouraged from fishing or tournament fishing because you feel like you have no chance of competing. There are some events where you're not going to have a chance to win because you don't have live scope, but there's also a really good chance you also fish tournaments where you have no chance to win because you don't know how to skip boat docks or you don't know how to throw a deep diving crankbait on offshore ledges. Neither of those skills require a live scope. You can crank offshore ledges without live scope just as effectively as with live scope because those fish are on the bottom, on structure. All you need to do is be able to read 2D sonar. But if you can't read 2D sonar, or even like a flasher like David Fritz used to do, you're not going to be able to catch those fish. If you can't skip a jig, you're not going to win a dock skipping tournament. So there's other reasons why you might not win a tournament rather than just live scope. So keep that in mind too. But we'll talk about that more on other videos. I'm kind of I'm a proponent of making sure people are not upset and stop fishing because of live scope. Even if it feels like it's a little bit of a disadvantage, I want to prove that guys can catch them without live scope too, and I'll show you by catching them with it and without it. Hopefully that's my goal at least. What do you think about that, Randy?
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, there's always more than one way to catch them. There are certain situations, like you said, where it's going to get one live scoping, or it's going to get one flipping or pitching, or it's going to get one, on a jerk bait. It's just every tournament's different. Every day on the water is different.
For sure. Someone asks if Mega 360 or live scope is better. Depends on how you like to fish and your style. If you don't want to chase suspended fish, get 360 imaging. 360 imaging, you don't need it either. It's not necessary if you're good at lining up on waypoints and you can graph stuff with side imaging. It's just more efficient. So like 360 imaging for me just makes me more efficient. It's not adding a new capability to my fishing. It's just, it makes hitting offshore sweet spots a little bit easier and a little bit faster. Saves me 2-3 minutes per offshore spot, which for me is a big deal, but it's not the end of the world at the end of the day. LiveScope gives me the capability to target suspended fish, which I can't do without it. If I don't have LiveScope, I can't target those suspended fish as effectively, period. So in my opinion, LiveScope is more important if you could just pick one, because it opens up a new style of fishing. But if you don't want to mess with suspended fish, they're out there in the middle, just randomly suspended out there or suspended on cover and stuff like that, the 360 imaging will help you hit offshore structure spots. Just if that's all you want LiveScope for is how to line up on the spot and hit it first cast, 360 imaging is actually better for you than LiveScope. But you can also do that with LiveScope. So overall, my opinion is LiveScope is better because it gives you more, it opens up a new style of fishing. That's my opinion on that. Let's see here. Okay, we're getting into a bunch of LiveScope discussions at the end. We don't want that. Randy's going to get mad. We got to leave Randy off on a happy note for the end of the Fish Mode live stream. But guys, really appreciate everyone who's still here, 213 people, and everyone who tunes in every single week to the Fish Moment live stream and who even watches it back after the fact. It's been a great year for Fish the Moment. Randy and I, our channels have grown a lot, and we really appreciate all the support on our website, fishthemoment.com, using all of our affiliate links, working with the companies we work with, supporting sponsors that support us like the Bass Tank and Bridgeford Foods, and all of our other sponsors. So we really appreciate all of those companies and also all of the anglers that are watching every single week and make this a part of their weekly ritual. It means a lot to us, and we couldn't be doing this without you, so huge shout out to all of our great supporters. Special shout out to all of our Patreon members for Fish the Moment, and also all of Randy's subscribers or channel subscribers on his page, on his face or his YouTube page. All of your channel members, Randy. You guys basically donate every single month to help us do what we do, make our videos, things like that. So to all of those Patreon members and channel members out there, thank you so much. Again, we could not be doing what we do without you. So Randy, anything else to kind of share or add to that?
Yeah, just what Jonny said, everybody. I agree with everything you said there. Much appreciated. You guys, a lot of you guys are here every week for the podcast. We appreciate that. I think a lot of the people that are on the podcast here are they're our base. I mean, there are the most loyal, fans that we have for what we do here, and it's not unnoticed. It's much appreciated, and hope everybody has a good Christmas, and we'll definitely see you guys after Christmas break.
For sure. Happy holidays, guys. Be safe. We'll see you back after we're refreshed and kind of take a little bit of time with family. And we're going to come back with a new energy to start off the new year and give you guys as much great fishing content as we can. Thanks again, guys, for all the support. And we'll see you guys in the new year, sometime in January, for the next Fish the Moment live stream. Have a great holidays, and we'll see you soon.